Scudgy. I'm a practicing witch and a professional tarot nerd. And I'm glad you're here. Our word for today is, well, I don't know if I should tell you. It's kind of secret, rather obfuscated. All right. I guess it's safe to let you in on the secret, to allow you into the club. Our word today is esoteric. These days, esoteric tends to refer to things which are strange, unusual, and understood by few. I myself am strange and unusual, and I don't understand myself all that often. Originally, though, esoteric meant knowledge or understanding intended only for a select or initiated group. From the Greek esoterikos, meaning belonging to the inner circle. Esoteric knowledge and wisdom was meant only for those who, due to training or initiation, were prepared to receive such things. The flip side of esoteric is exoteric, meaning meant for general consumption, knowledge for the laity, for the general public. Within the throes of the information age, it might seem odd to think that any knowledge is hidden or secret. But even so, there is some learning which is not really meant for everyone. It's not that such things are really secret, more it's that one has to have a certain foundation to be able to use or even make sense of such learning. Scientific papers are really esoteric. Sure, I can read a scientific paper. I might even understand some of the words. But such things aren't really meant for me. They're intended for an audience with a background of knowledge related to the contents of the paper. Whereas the science of popular science educators is exoteric. It's intended for everybody. But there's another aspect to esoteric knowledge. It's less about information and more about understanding. Sometimes all the knowing in the world just can't hold a candle to experience. There's a kind of knowing which can only be approached via direct experience. I could describe my mother's banana pudding to you all day long, and it wouldn't come close to the experience of that sublime delight. Spiritual experiences are like that a lot of the time. They are esoteric in that they can only be grasped fully through the experience. Experiences not everyone would have, at least not until they're ready for them. That's what I think of when I think of the mysteries. They're not mysteries because they're hidden or secret. They're mysteries because the unraveling of them happens through inner experience. The study of the tarot is like this too. As one studies the cards, greater and greater depth can be experienced. Today's card is the Hierophant. Many readers have a card or two or three or 78 that for reasons various and sundry give them fits. The Hierophant has been just such a card for me. When I first picked up the cards, a lot of changes were taking place in my life, not the least of which was a fundamental paradigm shift in my worldview. Like many of my friends, I came to the tarot and witchy things after growing up in the Christian church. For me, it was the Baptist church in the southern United States. Unlike some of my friends, however, I didn't have a bad experience there. In fact, there were a few things that I really enjoyed. I liked the singing. I really enjoyed the food. Man, Baptists, they love to eat. And although I didn't know what I was experiencing at the time, I enjoyed feeling the energy move during some of those services. But during high school, my love of science grew, and there were more and more things about my spiritual experience which lost their shine. Just stuff just didn't add up for me anymore. Maybe that was part of a teenage rebellion. It was an effort to find myself in life. And my exploration of learning and thought during college took me far afield into a world where there were lots of different ways to think about things. When I began to study the cards, it was with a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and this is the Hierophant that I encountered. Check him out. He just kind of seems to be telling me what to do. You're not the boss of me. When I was starting out with the tarot, I was no longer interested in being told what to think about spirituality. I was interested in experiencing spirituality for myself. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there are lots of people who find fulfillment in their experience in the Christian church, and I'm okay with that. If what you do makes you a better human, then you're doing it right. But I did come to the Hierophant with some baggage that needed to be unpacked. Hierophant is a weird word. It's not one we really hear all that much about these days. It comes to us from the Greek Hierophantes. It's from hieros, sacred, and phanein, to reveal. So we get one who shows us sacred things. Looking at it this way, one who shows, gives it a different feel. Not somebody telling us, but somebody showing us. Some folks might call someone who shows, who demonstrates, who reveals to us spiritual things a wisdom teacher. But there's another side to this idea as well. The Hierophant can also be considered to represent the exoteric side of spirituality, the form rather than the function, the traditions, customs, conventions, and institutions. Why do we do it that way? Because we always have. I've always cringed at the answer just because. I like to know why. When I was a kid, one of my frequent chores was setting the dinner table. Mother had a very specific way she wanted it done. You had the dinner plate there. To the left of the plate, I put a folded napkin, and on top of that, a fork. One of the bigger ones, unless we were having salad, and then there was a little one to the left of the big one there. And to the right of the plate, I placed a knife. Not one of the sharp knives, unless we were having steak, but butter knife, one of the dull ones. And the edge was facing towards the plate. And to the right of the knife went a spoon. I asked Mother once why we set the table that way. I couldn't figure out why it all mattered that the forks were on the left and the knife and spoon was on the right. And I never did really get an answer other than it's just the way we do it. What does any of this have to do with the Hierophant card, you might be asking? The Hierophant can be seen as representing tradition. We naked apes are social critters. I can practically hear the protests now. Yes, people can be difficult to deal with. Sometimes I'm difficult to deal with. Sometimes you're difficult to deal with. We're part of people. I'm reminded of a quote from the movie Men in Black. Tommy Lee Jones as K tells Jay, "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it." And that's true, sadly, sometimes. Just look at us. Humans. We're not really well adapted to surviving out in the wild. We don't have fur. Our eyesight and hearing are only so-so, and our sense of smell is practically non-existent. We don't have fangs or claws. We're clumsy. We're not strong. We do have these relatively big brains, which occasionally we'll use, and we got these nifty thumb things, and we have culture. Anthropologists think of culture as that collection of shared knowledge and behavior human groups possess and pass down to their offspring. Culture can include everything from language to art to rules and to technology. It's this shared approach which can allow us to work together. And it took working together as a group to prevent us being eaten into extinction or dying of starvation or exposure as our ancestors wandered out of Africa. Think what you like about modern humanity, but it's pretty amazing that we've made it this far. And that's due at least partly, if not mostly, to our social nature and to working together. There are lots of words we can use to talk about this collective drive. Culture, custom, tradition, institution. And while there may be nuance there in all these words, I don't really think they're synonyms. They do kind of form an umbrella of terms about how we humans work and live together. I think we can see the Hierophant as symbolic as this part of human nature, this togetherness for good or for bad. In the Kabbalah of the Golden Dawn, the Hierophant lies on the tree between Chokhmah, wisdom, and Chesed, mercy. These are the second and fourth Sephirah, and they fall on the pillar of mercy, the one on the right-hand side there. And since I'm a dummy when it comes to Kabbalah, I struggled a bit understanding this placement. You see, it seems to me that the pillar of mercy is one of expansion, and the ideas of tradition seem to be restrictive. And that wisdom thing seemed more to be internal than external, and I wondered if this placement didn't fit the High Priestess better. Then I came across an alternative name for the Sephirah, Chesed, which is sometimes called loving kindness. I've heard this term in conjunction with Buddhism and mindfulness meditation practice, and that sort of flipped a switch for me. You see, in the philosophy of the Kabbalah, Tiferet, the sixth Sephirah, the highest up, this one in the middle there, is highest up the tree that we can move as mere people. That's the home of the truly enlightened. The wisdom of Chokhmah is a part of what's called the supernal triangle and is associated with the spiritual energies responsible for the creation of our reality. And that wisdom isn't a wisdom of the mind. It's not something that we can grasp. It's a wisdom of emptiness, a wisdom at the beginning of being. With that and the concept of loving kindness, my mind went from a preacher or pope idea to that of a wisdom teacher, one who reveals spiritual stuff, like Yoda or the Dalai Lama, and seemed to fit the definition of the Hierophant even better. Astrologically speaking, the Hierophant is associated with Taurus, a fixed earth sign. And the symbol for Taurus is the bull, because Taurus is Latin for bull. The traits associated with Taurians, that's Taurus people, by the way. They're hard-working, reliable, food-loving, and, well, bullheaded. How does this fit the Hierophant? I suppose that depends on what role you see the Hierophant playing in the deck. I grew up around cattle. They're pretty peaceful creatures in my experience most of the time. That kind of fits the idea of a wisdom teacher for me, peaceful and steady. But if you see the Hierophant as a symbol of oppressive tradition, then, well, bullheadedness of Taurus can fit there too. And that's it. That's all I have on Taurus and the Hierophant. I'm still not sure the Hierophant fits Taurus neatly, but maybe a real astrologer might have better luck. Let's take a look at a few cards. Oh, this guy again. There really is a lot to unpack in this card. It was inspired in part, at least, by earlier Marseilles-style decks. The Marseilles style developed in France in the 17th and 18th centuries and contained a lot of Catholic symbols. And this card is just simply overflowing with symbolism. So let's hit a few high points. On the two aspirants the little dudes in the front, we can see on their robes are roses and lilies, which are recurring symbols throughout this deck. One way of considering these flowers is that the lilies symbolize wisdom and the roses symbolize compassion. Both are traits that we consider to be positive in a spiritual setting. And check out dude's weird hat. That thing is modeled after the papal tiara, which, while no longer in use by the Pope, has its own collection of speculation around its meaning. This one on the card has 3 tiers, and if you're as nerdy as I am, you do things like count how many pointy bits are visible on each tier. And from the bottom to the top, that would be 5, 7, and 3, by the way. Does that mean anything? It might, depending on how you look at it. The card is number 5, after all, and if you add 7 and 3, you get 10, which is the number of Sephiroth on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. The staff he's holding has 3 crossbars. There's that 3 again. And this symbol is based on the papal cross used in symbolic devices used by the Pope. But what's it doing here? Perhaps those 3 crossbars could represent a 3-part cosmology: heaven, hell, and earth, upper, middle, and lower worlds. And also the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah is subdivided into 3 parts. And the keys here, also a part of Catholic symbolism. These are the keys of St. Peter. But could these symbolize here the idea that knowledge and wisdom are the keys to understanding? And in this card, the Hierophant himself isn't holding the keys. They're right there in the front, ready to be used. And our Hierophant friend here is seated between 2 pillars. This is another frequent motif in the tarot. What's behind him? Is that a passage, an open doorway, or is that a wall? I suppose that might depend on what you think of this card. Maybe he's there as a doorman to open the door for you and to point the way if you're ready. Or maybe he's there to keep you out, keep all the secrets for himself. Here in the Robin Wood Tarot, designed around 1989, we see some similar imagery, but it's got a different flavor. The roses and lilies are on the Hierophant's robes, not on the clothing a little guy's praying there. Like he might be putting on the traits of wisdom and compassion. And the keys, well, they're on his hat, like he's keeping them for himself. And the pillars, check this out. There seems to be the faces of a man and a woman at the top of the pillars. Here they represent the pillar of mercy and the pillar of severity on the Tree of Life. Interesting, though, that the little scenes there seem to represent the opposite pillar from what they're on. And behind the Hierophant, that's definitely a bricked up doorway. In a guidebook that came with the deck, Robin Wood details some of her thoughts on this card. I realized when I began writing this description that not everyone has the same attitude about conformity I do. My thesaurus, for instance, uses words like harmony, agreement, felicity, fitness, concord as synonyms for conformity. I have always thought of it more in the vein of suppression, repression, smothering, squashing, extinguishing personality, limitation. Guess that's telling, isn't it? So this card may not mean exactly the same thing in my deck that it means in others. I have never found conformity to be life-affirming. I tend to think it's something that was devised to more easily control others. While I think these thoughts might be a bit harsh, I do admit that some of my trouble unpacking this card over the years shared some of these sentiments. But is conformity always oppressive? Before you jump on the yes train, consider this. You ever ride in or drive a car on public roads? In general, folks going one way stay on one side of the road, and folks going the other way stay on the other side, right? And at intersections, folks will, for the most part, wait for the signal for their turn to go. Yes, there are lots of bad drivers out there, but most of the time, folks follow the rules. If that weren't the case, there would be a lot more crashes than there are. See, this is an example of positive conformity. I think that we can get so hung up on the images on a card that we can miss the overall message. Here in the Urban Tarot by Robin Scott, we still have the Christian symbolism, but here it's a priest-looking dude instead of a pope-looking dude. Scott says in the guidebook, the Hierophant represents the power of organization and what it means to be part of something larger than yourself. It is about community and trusting the structure of a hierarchy. There is both light and darkness in this card, as any organization we give ourselves to can just as easily lead us into fulfillment and understanding, or into dogmatic intolerance and ignorance. A glass stands half full on the desk as a reminder of that balance. I recognize the power that the church has had and continues to have, both to promote great good in the world and also to foster intense bigotry and hate. The good does not erase the bad, but neither does the bad invalidate the good. I think this is an important thing to remember with this card, that organizations and institutions in society are ultimately organized and instituted by people. And there are all kinds of people out there, for better or for worse. Here in Barbara Moore's Wizard's Tarot, we leave the church and enter a classroom. School is another institution which we've had experience with, and like religion, there are a wide range of experiences. I enjoyed school. I simply loved learning things, but not everyone had a positive experience in school like I did. After all, it's not all learning. There's all that social stuff, too. But in this card, Moore isn't focusing as much on the institution as on the figure of the teacher. From the guidebook, a Hierophant teaches how to express lofty beliefs and spiritual aspirations in everyday life. His goal is not following arbitrary rules, but instead mindfully bringing faith to life and manifesting the sacred in this world. While this card is often associated with religion, I don't think the word faith is always about religion. The origin of the word is related to concepts like trust and confidence, and it's possible to have faith in things other than religion, like ourselves. Here in the Wildwood Tarot by Mark Ryan, John Matthews, and Will Worthington, we've left civilization altogether and we've entered the Wildwood. The time is the dead of winter, and we're presented with the ancestor. Our ancestors, those that came before us, are the source and origin of, well, us and where we are. For some, their ancestors are a source of great strength, and for others, not so much. But regardless of our own relationship with our past, if we look far enough back, we all share ancestry with nature itself. The authors of the Wildwood wrote, "The ancestor is linked to the part of our soul that is most ancient and most closely related to the archetypes that represent nature. She is a guardian of the sacred heart of the land and summons you by beating the drum to the heartbeat of the earth." The Hierophant is one of those cards which can be difficult for many for a variety of reasons, but it doesn't have to be. The Hierophant isn't just about restrictive institutions. It's also about wisdom teachers, peace, stability, and faith. And it can be related to our ancestors too, our families, and our connection to nature itself. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. If you've enjoyed your time, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. I'm Skaji. Safe journey.